Welcome to a Tuesday edition of the First Things First podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Wolfe. Catch us Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern on FS1. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Tell us what you think and leave us a review. Time now to bring in Nick and the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. Football on a Monday night. Giants hosting the Lions. All eyes on Odell Beckham Jr. making his long-awaited return, and it didn't quite go as planned as the Giants lost 24-10. OBJ only caught 4 passes for 36 yards as the Giants couldn't get anything going offensively. Odell and Eli Manning met the media after the game.
I just wanted to come out, see what I could do. You know, we limited it. And it felt good to be able to play again. It's been a long time, so just kind of getting your feet wet.
I got to find ways to play better, get more completions, convert on third down. That's a quarterback's job. He's got to find ways to move the offense and move the ball and score touchdowns. So we're not doing that enough.
So, Nick, the Giants had a lot of problems last night, and some of them were more glaring than others. But are there offensive problems beyond Odell Beckham's repair?
No. The Giants can still...
Wait a second. Now, you asked him the first question of the day.
Whoa.
The Giants' problems.
Yes.
Are they beyond Odell's repair?
Yes.
Okay, now go ahead.
What?
Because I didn't think you were off to the right track on this
What do you mean? What?
Did he have the answer wrong?
Unless he's baby Jesus. Because they had a lot of problems.
Are you baby Jesus?
But go ahead. I'm going to allow you to go ahead and start it
They
off.
had a lot of problems, but you also had reasons last night for some optimism that they can fix them enough to let the defense be the defense. So, no, I don't think the Giants' season is lost. I don't think their offense is beyond repair. And I think we saw last night, even with just 4 catches for 36 yards, what Odell changes for them offensively. You saw, as opposed to week 1, when there were no dynamic playmakers on the field, you saw because even with a hampered Odell, the attention that had to be paid to him, what it allowed the tight ends for the Giants to do. Eli, in a mediocre, if not below average game, was 7 of 10 for 108 yards and a touchdown when targeting his tight ends. Why? Safeties couldn't worry about the tight end position because safeties were worried about Odell, even a gimpy Odell. You also saw that this game was going true to form for how the Giants won 11 games last year. Keep it close, have your defense choke them out late, and make 1 or 2 big plays. The problem was the big play was the punt return for Detroit that blew the game open, and Odell wasn't there to make his big play. He was there but was not able, because what we saw yesterday with the ankle was that Odell could still run his slant route, but that slant route that he was a threat to take to the house every game last year, he wasn't that threat yesterday. He caught the first 4 balls thrown to him, the final pass thrown to him of the game. He dropped. It would have been short of the first down anyway. So, listen, 0-2 is a bad place to be. 0-2 is a really bad place to be when your next 2 games are road games against Philly and Tampa. They have to get a lot of things fixed, most notably the offensive line. But you saw enough yesterday that was a difference from how that offense looked in week 1 to how it functioned in week 2, to where I think once Odell is fully healthy, you could see this team score 17 to 20 points, which is typically all they'll need to win.
Right. First things first. Odell played yesterday just on guts. He's about 75%. A number of players that I know, wide receivers, they wouldn't have been out there. And one was because he's limited on how far he could go down the field. The quick breaking routes, the in breaking routes, he was comfortable doing that. But you didn't see him stretch the field. Now, Nick has numbers that would say Odell catches a lot of short passes and make it on. But from a game plan standpoint, because you talked about him even being a decoy, opening up for the tight ends, yes, on the short stuff. But imagine even if he could take the top off the defense, right. If he could have ran deep post or takeoff routes down the sideline, it even opens up more space. He's a great football player. But as wide receivers, we're limited to the impact we can have on the game based upon the offensive line. And this is no indictment on college football, but people wonder, because you're hearing more and more conversations earlier in the season, why is their offense struggling? And the consistent theme is if you don't have a quarterback, it's your offensive line. And NFL general managers and head coaches have disregarded the offensive line. Now, the offensive linemen that we're getting out of college football, because college football is so much spread offense and it's not power football, just knock a guy back. So the training for young offensive linemen coming into the league is not up to par on the other skilled positions on the offensive side.
But, Cece, that's where, if you're watching the game yesterday, that's where, and we'll talk about Ben McAdoo later, everyone recognized that Eric Flowers could not handle Ziggy Ansah and that he needed help. How do you not send a tight end to the left side when Ziggy Ansah is ruining your entire game?
This is the dilemma. That's why I don't think Odell can fix their problem. Odell being on the field, it opened up. You said Eli was 7 of 10 throwing to the tight ends.
Yep.
But you know how you help out a tackle? By leaving the tight end in. So now you have less receivers into the route. So now you have more defenders to defend Odell, Brandon Marshall, Sterling Shepard. So there's a huge numbers difference. So you're saying, okay, help the tackle. Yes, Flowers is not a left tackle. They drafted him in the first round. Their right tackle is a kid I love. I've been coaching him since he was 15, Bobby Hart. He got hurt, had a bad ankle. The right tackle, he's not a right tackle. Played college at Florida State. He's an interior guy. He's a guard. He's not a tackle. So Flowers and Hart, they can't be replaced. And you can't put tight ends, running backs, blocking, helping them out because it makes it easier for the defense. So, yes, it was nice to see Odell out there. He's not 100%. But to me, that offensive line and Eli Manning at this stage of his career, those should be the conversations. Like, if you want some remedies, that's where you look. Look to number 10, all right, and look to the front office and the head coach to be able to fix that offensive line.
I was going to ask that. I mean, a lot of what we saw last night, I would say you guys especially, I saw it as someone just watching the game, that Eric Flowers, that the offensive line obviously didn't give Eli the best chance to hit who he wanted to hit, to stay up. The guy was sacked 5 times. But also look to Eli Manning, who had there were a couple of times last night where you questioned what he was doing, time management, things like that. How much of what we saw last night was, I know what you're going to say, Eli being 36 and just not as quick with everything, or the fact that he just wasn't given the best opportunity to play?
All quarterbacks, regardless of Eli's age, all quarterbacks, when they're hit early in the game, it affects them, regardless of how much experience they had. Now, Eli, that's what we saw last night. In the first quarter, I mean, he got hit immediately. So he knows the tone of the game. He knows I'm not going to have time. I'm going to be rushed. And as you could see, it affected his decision-making. Also, his ability just to do the basic things we ask quarterbacks to do. Listen to the play in your headset. It's in your helmet. All right? Get the formation, dictate it to the offense, and get in and out of the huddle.
Did you not see him do that?
No, it was very slow. For Eli, he's been in this offense long enough. Him and the head coach have had a great rapport. They should be able to call plays in situations like that weren't really stressful situations.
Cece, that you're assuming something there that I don't know if it's fair, which is that he's getting the play in time. You're assuming that Ben McAdoo on his giant menu of plays is quickly getting the play in.
Right. Well, when the coach says after the game.
Well, and that's
okay.
I know we're going to get into that. I don't know how fair that was of McAdoo. But on Eli, I am an Eli critic. I've been an Eli critic. I'm a guy that does not think I'm a guy that does think, despite his 2 Super Bowls, that he is not a Hall of Fame caliber player. However, yesterday, the problem was not Eli Manning. Eli made one dreadful throw. He had Brandon Marshall wide open going across the middle. It would have been a first down. It might have been Evan Ingram. He was on the interception. I apologize. I can't remember who he was throwing it to. But it was wide open going across the middle. He let him way too much. It ended up being an interception. That can't happen. You can't miss that throw. But aside from that throw, I thought Eli showed guts. I thought he made some big throws when he knew he was going to get crushed. And his numbers speak to the fact that he actually played, given how much pressure he was under, pretty well. The Giants' defense held Matt Stafford, the league's highest paid player, to 122 yards passing, the second lowest of his career. You saw the elements to the Giants being who they were last year, a team with an excellent defense that makes just enough plays offensively. Odell was not 100%. When I tweeted before the game, I think the Giants win. I think Odell is a huge game. That obviously did not come to fruition. But you saw there are going to be people this morning that will use my favorite stat. You start 0-2, you miss the playoffs 88% of the time, and say the Giants season is over. I do not believe the Giants season is over, and there's no team in that division right now that looks amazing. Dallas showed flaws, right. Philly's shown flaws, Washington showed flaws.
But the Giants will have to find a way to score more than 20 points a game at some point,
correct,
with or without Odell in the lineup, if they want to be competitive. Tough moment for the Giants in the 24-10 loss against the Lions. At the end of the third quarter, Eli Manning and Ben McAdoo had a miscue on a 4th and goal at the 2 that led to a delay of game. After the game, Coach Ben McAdoo discussed this play.
Sloppy quarterback play. Quarterback and the center need to be on the same page there. We got to get the ball snapped. We have a veteran quarterback who's played a lot of football. I expect us to get the ball snapped.
Former head coach Eric Mangini joins us, and when he was discussing this earlier, he called what Ben McAdoo said a compliment sandwich, which was...
No, what Jason Garrett did.
Oh, you thought Jason Garrett was a compliment sandwich. But you didn't have too big of an issue of Ben McAdoo calling out Eli Manning. I thought it was unnecessary for him to call out his quarterback, but you agree with me wholeheartedly?
Well, here's what I'd say about the timeout. I understand the timeout part of the equation, because when you have a veteran quarterback, usually you're going to allow him to make that decision. If it's a younger quarterback and you're not sure whether or not he can make that decision, you'd intervene. But with a guy like Eli, you're going to let him decide whether or not he has enough time to get the ball off. The sloppy quarterback play, that was a little bit more aggressive than Jason Garrett was. Do I have a problem with that? No, I don't really have a problem with it.
So it was sloppy quarterback play?
Well, in that situation, yeah, it was probably sloppy quarterback play.
Go ahead, Cece.
No, it was a combination of sloppy quarterback play, and he talked about the center. And the reason why, in the video, you could see that the linebackers had gotten up into the A gap. So he was trying to change the protection. And in trying to change the protection, it got within 5 seconds. So typically with the offensive line, you can't change the protection within 5 seconds, okay, because you have to change it. They have to get reset. And typically when you audible, the snap count is not on 1 because the team will start to recognize it and jump your snap count. So when you audible, most teams that it's on the 2nd hut. So the process takes time. If Ben McAdoo, if he knew that, if he had the insight in knowing that this protection was fine and the center and the quarterback messed it up, he's given us insight that they could have run the play. And he knows more about their offense and what they're doing, regardless if we have a problem with what he said. To me, you have to coach up players. Now, if you guys don't do they call them out in the media and everything? Well, that is our business. It's the National Football League. Coaches do it different ways. Ben McAdoo was not wrong in what he said because it was a communication error between the center and the quarterback, and they were concerned about the blitz look that they were getting.
And it's also one of those things where you're assuming that if Eli's going up and he's going to change the protection and he's going to make those adjustments, he understands the process and how long it takes. And if at the end of the day he doesn't feel like he can get the play off, he's going to stop and take the timeout. He's trusting him to do that, and that didn't happen, and I think that's where the sloppy quarterback play comes in on the comment.
What's frustrating for me in this instance is we have seen repeatedly with this coach, Ben McAdoo, that these plays get in a few seconds later than we're seeing across the league. It's one of the reasons why from last year to this year, he pared down that giant, ridiculously sized play sheet that he had because it was taking too long to get the play in. You tell me if this is unfair. In a situation like this, where you have 3rd and goal from the 10 they had, if you know the pass play, you're not running where all the routes are going to the end zone. You know there's possibility that the ball is going to end up not a touchdown, not an incompletion, just short of the end zone, as it did. You need to know when you're calling that 3rd down play, if we get it to 4th and within what are we going for it? Are we kicking a field goal no matter what? Are we going for it on 4th if we're within 3 yards, 2 yards, 1 yard? That way, as soon as the play's over, you can send in what you're doing. You need to know on 4th down or on 3rd down what you're going to do on 4th down. The Giants didn't know that. So part of the reason that Eli was up against it, and I'm no big Eli Manning defender, but part of the reason they were up against it was because The Giants didn't know what they were doing beforehand. It took them too long to get the play in. That is on the head coach. I don't mind if Cris calls me out in a meeting after the show in front of the staff for something I screwed up. But if I screwed it up and Cris had part to do with me screwing it up, and then he's throwing me under the bus to everyone, that's going to aggravate me. That's the part of this that I think is unfair to Eli.
Well, I'm not sure how late the play came in, but this is one of the difficulties of being the offensive coordinator and the head coach. Or it could be one of the best things.
Yes.
Is he had to make a decision on third down as to what he wanted to do. And then as a head coach, he had decided to go for it. And then as a coordinator, he had to pick his plays. What I always believed in is that to have a core group of plays each week, there were gotta-have-it plays. You knew what you were going to run in that critical situation. You were going to practice that. And when it came down to it, the players knew exactly what you were going to run. So everybody was on the same page and moving forward quickly in the most critical moments.
Coach, can I ask all of you guys a question? You probably know this better than I do. If what you described isn't on that Olive Garden menu, what is? I thought what's on there is, hey, if we're 3rd and goal and it's this much time left, we're doing this. So to make it actually easier when you go into a game, what else is on there besides all those plays in various situations so there is less thinking time?
This is what really happens, all right, in real time. All right, on 3rd down, they've probably decided that they're going to go for it on 4th. But they don't know the measurement. And inside the 5-yard line is the hardest place to throw the football. Well, why? Spacing. All right? There's only 10 yards in the end zone. You only got 5 yards, or the 4-yard line. You only got 4 or 5 yards there. So you only have 15 yards. If they only rush 4, then they got 7 guys to defend this small space. So the number of plays that you can run, there's only a few of them. But if it's 4th and 6, the call is different than if it's 4th and 4. What type of defense did they have in? Did they go to a goal line? Now, I'm also talking to the headset to the people upstairs who can see the substitution. So all this is happening in real time. 3rd down happens. Now we have 4th and goal. Okay, we're going to go for it. On the call sheet, there are 5 calls, either 2-point plays, 4th down and short, that are on the call sheet. Myself, Brian Billick taught me this. Cris, remember them. And I used to memorize them because I had a couple quarterbacks, when the call came in, they were nervous and stuttering. And I'd be scat right, H dodge, on 2. And so I've seen that happen to younger quarterbacks before.
We weren't even going to take that chance in saying, hey, Cris, remember, we were going to define them during the week and practice them and made sure everybody knew if we get into this critical situation, this is what we are calling. This is our gotta-have-it play. And it used to frustrate me early on in my head coaching career. We'd practice the gotta-have-it plays. We'd get in the game. It'd be a critical situation. The offensive coordinator calls something different.
Yes.
And I said, what are you doing? Why do you think we practice this?
Now, also, one of the problems with the Giants, and I'll let you go, is
I never know what he's doing back there.
One of the biggest problems is when you don't have success, like the Giants have not had, like Ben McAdoo has been a successful offensive coordinator. He can formulate first personnel, groupings, and attack defenses a certain way. He's been successful. But now you're at a critical juncture. He don't have a whole bunch. You know why? He can't protect. He can't run the ball. So I don't care how big the sheet is. None of them plays are good if guys don't make plays. So he's got a problem. And that's how you can run out of time in real time in the red zone.
And what you're discussing quickly is that's the benefit to being the offensive coordinator and the head coach that you didn't have. Like, you don't have to worry about some guy in a booth not going with your gotta-have-it play. The downside is you got a lot going on. And Ben McAdoo at the end of the first half yesterday totally butchered an obvious timeout situation, likely because too much, like, it's a lot of responsibilities. These are big, full-time, highly paid jobs separately. When you combine them, it's a really rough spot.
And you're adding to the fact that you've got a veteran quarterback and you want to put a lot of faith and trust in him as well. So there's a ton of moving parts going on in a critical situation, and you want to take as much thinking out of that as you can.
So Ezekiel Elliott has taken a ton of heat for his lack of effort in the Cowboys' blowout loss against Denver. And if getting crushed by the media and the fans wasn't bad enough, now head coach Jason Garrett is piling on.
Well, one of the things is the foundation of our football team is fight. We're going to compete and fight, scratch and claw. That's what we're going to be. And that's one of the reasons we love Zeke Elliott. That's what he is. Watch him play. He competes. He battles. And again, those plays were uncharacteristic of him. So we'll certainly address it with him. But we have to address that with our entire team. That's not the way we play.
Coach Eric Mangini is back with us. Coach, does Ezekiel Elliott deserve all the blame for that play that he took off?
That's pretty tepid criticism, isn't it? That's okay, hardly calling anybody out.
Wrenching right
It
there.
was like what I'm saying.
No, it was like a compliment sandwich. It was.
Wait, Coach, what was it?
It was a compliment sandwich.
Hashtag compliment sandwich. I love it.
Where you tell him how, look, he's such a great competitor. He's so good. That's why we love him. He could have really done a better job with that, but. We're also going to talk to the whole team. It's like nice, little tiny bit of, we didn't like that. And then nice.
That's the J-Lo, the interview. Compliment, question.
Definitely, yeah.
Anyway, you all look super great today, and you're very handsome. And we're back after this. I get the compliment question.
That's we were talking about McAdoo earlier about doing it to the media. In this instance, when it is the topic of the day, fair or not, like that was one of the big things. We talked about it. They were talking about in Dallas. I actually think Jason Garrett did Zeke a service there, not a disservice, because of the way he handled it. Because he went out of his way to do what you're saying, which is, listen, we saw it, not okay, but it's not who he is. My concern with it yesterday, and my concern still remains today, and I just want to know where you're at on it, is as a coach, would it worry you more that this is something we've never seen from this guy, and it happened while he was having a game we've never seen from him? Would it worry you that, okay, we've always gotten this super high level at all times Ezekiel Elliott, but we've also always had productive Ezekiel Elliott? And in games where he's not as productive, which we hadn't seen, where he's not getting the ball as much, which we hadn't seen, are we going to get a different guy? That was my only real level of concern about this yesterday.
Well, yeah, I definitely have that concern. And going into the second year, it's Dak and it's Zeke, and it's all young players. You don't really know who they are. You're still learning about these guys. Mm-hmm. And we haven't seen a situation where Zeke's been unproductive, where the Cowboys have had that kind of game. How are they going to deal with adversity? And in terms of calling out players, ideally you do everything in the meeting room. That's what you want. But in a situation like
this... Say that a little slower. Can you
wait. Look, ideally you do everything in the meeting room, and you want to keep things in-house. But in a situation like this where you can't move away from the question. You've got to address the question. It's a young player. I know he's an emerging star. It's important for him to understand this is not okay. And it's important to send the message collectively, this is not okay. Now, you can address it in a lot harsher terms in the meeting, but that is not okay. And everybody's got to know it.
Coach, for one, I mean, we have spent most of our adult lives in these locker rooms and in these meeting rooms. And the versions that we have seen from Jason Garrett and Ben McAdoo, these are tame versions of the conversations that really happen between the coaches and the players.
Tell us. Give me some insight what it's really like.
Yeah, and you're being nice with the word tame.
No, I'd love to know.
Harsher. It's even a harsher word than that.
I remember one time in Philadelphia earlier in my career, the late Dale Hopp, great defensive line coach for Buddy Ryan, helped invent the 46 defense. There became a discussion about a player's grade after the game. And then the discussion got more heated. Reggie White, Seth Joyner, Clyde Simmons, Jerome Brown, and the next thing I know, the divider falls down. And we got 6 guys fighting the day after we won. The day after we won.
What do you mean fighting? Like fighting?
Fighting with the coach because of what the coach had said to him. So, I mean, my mom has not talked to me as bad as NFL coaches have. My college coaches, the way they charge me. My high school coach, almost every coach at every level has been in your face, and I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to hear, not when you want to hear it. Now, there's a business called the NFL, so the coaches, they clean it up a little bit. But in private, I mean, you free game. Any player that I've ever played with, they've been free game. So to see coaches being criticized because, you know something, they could have said something a little bit easier, Man, their livelihoods are at stake. There's only 16 games. Every game is either pass or fail. There ain't no incomplete. And you only have so many games. So now we're just going to criticize coaches based on every little word. Oh, he went at him too soft. Oh, he went at him too hard. All right, this game is supposed to be taught a certain way.
If it was, then the coach would get out there and say, you know what? Eric Flowers didn't do his job. That was terrible. You know what else? Hey, Brandon Marshall should have caught that. That was terrible. And you know what? Maybe we shouldn't have brought him over here. Like, it would just be vomitosis of
They didn't ask him that question. They asked him about the sequence when they were in the red zone, and he answered it. When you have a veteran center, and especially the experience we have at quarterback, the play should get run.
Well, so that's if people just joining us, that's from the Eli Manning discussion, that not the Zeke Elliott and Jason Garrett discussion.
But we're talking about how
in general,
a coach responds.
I just wanted to make sure people understood the context of it. The one issue that, and tell me if I'm wrong here, that I think some coaches have is players learn early on. Are you, I guess to use a cliche, a player's coach, more of an old school hard-nosed coach, and are you the way I understand, it is very difficult for a coach to transition, to start off as your buddy coach and then all of a sudden be the harder coach, pardon me. Jason Garrett has never been considered one of the hardline guys. So does he have, in your experience, would you believe the credibility in the locker room to do what you guys are discussing, which is to really go at somebody? Or does he have to do it in a gentler way because that's the coach he's been for most of his tenure in Dallas?
Well, that was a pretty gentle way to go
I know,
at someone.
But in the locker room, I'm saying.
In the locker room, you have to be whoever you are. And do I think that it's hard to go from being everybody's friend, hanging out, and then suddenly taking a hard line? It's the same thing with parenting. You've got to set a tone. You've got to set the things that you believe in, and it's much easier to go from a hard line and soften than it is to go from a softer line and then suddenly try to get hard. Because all the players in the locker room say, well, wait a second. That personality was fine when we were winning. That personality was fine for a long time, and now suddenly it's not good enough? It's not authentic.
And you're not going to be able to understand the personality of an NFL coach by watching the press conference. And I'm going to give you the best example of it is Bill Belichick. All right? You will not meet a more funny person, a more engaging person, but he does his stick for the media, all right? But off camera, he's totally a different person. All right? Who Eric Mangini was as a coach, you don't even know it. Ask the former players, all right? Because I've talked to him, and I've worked with Coach for a while, so I know that. He's a different person than the person that speaks on television.
It's been a minute since we've talked the NBA. Kyrie Irving opened up in a way few pro athletes ever do in a revealing interview on Monday. In a sit-down with ESPN, Irving admits he didn't speak to LeBron when he asked for a trade from Cleveland, saying, quote, "Why would I have to?" Here's more now from Kyrie Irving.
I don't think that you owe anything to another person in terms of figuring out what you want to do with your life. And it's not anything personal. I'm not here to tirade anybody. I'm not here to go at any particular person or the organization because I have nothing but love for Cleveland.
So, Nick, they want me to ask you if you have a problem with these comments. And yet, I guess my question is, how big of a problem do you have with these comments?
What he said, this went on for about 18 minutes, and you cannot find a 40-second clip that doesn't have a head-scratching moment. There's the clip we played where he says, in life, you don't owe anything to anyone. That's not how life works. Like, that's just not how human societies work.
Right. So,
like, literally.
So you've gotten to this spot in your life with no assistance.
Well, that obviously not. And it's, I mean, literally since we evolved from hunter-gatherer tribes to greater societal groups, like it is an interpersonal relationship that helps you grow. So that doesn't make sense. Kyrie, the quote we didn't play, but that you read, where he was asked why he didn't tell LeBron, and his response is, why would I have to? Kyrie talks a lot in this interview about being a grown-up, evolving into the man he wants to be. And you know how much I like Kyrie Irving. the biggest, I have a 19-year-old son. One of the biggest indicators of transitioning from childhood or youth to grown-up adulthood is when you realize life is not about what you have to do as often as it is about what you should do. No, Kyrie Irving does not have to say anything to LeBron James. And if I decided tomorrow to quit this television show to go become a professional poker player, I wouldn't have to tell either one of you guys. But it would be the wrong thing to do not to. And when Kyrie in the interview says, Stephen A. asks him, you know people are going to think that this is a shot or that this shows something, that LeBron's going to take this a certain way. Kyrie says, yeah. And then he's asked, do you care? And he says, no. That is not who Kyrie has represented himself and who he has represented that relationship to be. So the entire thing was puzzling. I don't know why Kyrie did the interview because he didn't seem interested in actually answering the questions. And I have no better insight on why he wanted out of Cleveland today than I did yesterday.
Cece, my question to you, as someone who's been in the spotlight and who's been asked a million different times, a million different ways by a million different reporters, and part of your job is either to answer questions you want to answer or not questions, and you've probably got really good, especially at the end of your career, at deflecting things you didn't want to talk about. This was a topic that, for as much as we wanted to hear what he said, I can't understand why he would do it. Why now? Why the way he did it? The fashion he did it? The lackluster effort he did it in? The lackluster energy he used to do it? Explain to me, could you try to even step into his shoes for a second to figure out why the timing was that he felt he needed to say what he needed to say when he needed to say it?
Well, first things first, he has the right to be able to decide what's the best move for his career. He might have had some type of indicator that from Cleveland, LeBron might not be there, or some other reason. The owner, other people in the organization, he might not have had the support. So he has that right. He forced a trade. He's in Boston now. Now, he says that in some other interviews and everything, he wants to play in the pick and roll. He wants to become more of a complete player. Okay, you have that right. Now, I remember when we drafted Randy Moss. Randy Moss called me on the phone draft day. Said, I've heard that you're one of the best ever, and I want you to mentor me. I want you to help me out. I said, okay, no problem. So he called your agent. I want you to buy a house or a condo in Boca Raton. You have to move here because that's where we train. And once you do that, I'll get you to the next step. The next week, his agent, they had processed it. Randy was in South Florida. He was, anything you tell me to do, I'll do it. And to me, that's a lot like Kyrie was when LeBron decided to come back. All right? Because Kyrie was not the player he is today that he was 3 years ago when LeBron came back. So LeBron helped him develop on and off the field. I know people who know Kyrie. And he has gone through stretches of his life where he's been very, very immature. And LeBron, besides his dad, has been one of the most influential people in seeing him develop on and off the court.
So how do you not tell him once you make the decision?
Sometimes, and I think Randy and I went through the same thing. Randy developed a resentment towards the questioning of, well, Coach Green and Cris Carter, they help you, they do this. Not all the questions, a lot of the questions had to do with us helping him be successful. Randy got tired of it and was like, listen, at some point I need to get credit for my own work. Now, I was getting closer to retirement and I was getting ready to move on. And at one point, Randy felt like it was best for him to take over the team, him and Dante Culpepper. I totally understood that. I retired. Got a television job, ended up playing another half a year in Miami. That's another story. But he decided at that point in his career, that's what he wanted to do. Now, Randy and I are mature enough that we're still friends to this day. But there was some tension there because he decided at that point he didn't want me to mentor him anymore. But I understood. But Randy told me All right? And he told me what he wanted to do.
That's the part of this that, because you said in the beginning, Kyrie has the right. Of course he has the right.
Yes.
No one is denying he has the right. The question now is why he did it, why he wanted to execute that right, and why he went about it the way he did. And he also said in this interview, he had been wanting out of Cleveland well before the offseason. He said that he felt as a professional, he didn't want, and good for him, he didn't want it to distract from the season, so he kept it in. But he knew for a while he wanted out.
See, to me, he's very disingenuous throughout the interview. Now, so you're saying after they won, after he hits the shot.
That's what he's saying.
Between that date and yesterday, or the end of the finals. Let's go to the end of the finals. There was times in there that he didn't want to be in Cleveland.
But that's what makes it more disingenuous is, and this is one of the downsides, I guess, of being a pro athlete, is we have all this video of him, play the video during the Eastern Conference Finals, May of this year, when he, according to his own words, already wants out. Here's what he says about LeBron.
When you get to that level of trust, and you allow him to, or you allow someone to come into, a friendship that extends well off the court, and you understand how great this era can be if we are selfless to the point where we don't think about anything else except for the greatness of our team and what we can accomplish.
Nick, what does he get from not talking to LeBron? What does he gain from not saying anything?
You said in the beginning it was petty. Of course it's petty. It's petty, juvenile, and childish. And it also, at some point he's lying. Either yesterday, when he's saying he knew he wanted out during the season, or at that podium. That was during the Eastern Conference Finals. Oh, well, maybe it was what happened during the finals, losing 4 out of 5 to Golden State. Well, here's Kyrie, the day they lost the finals, after the last game. Here's what he says about LeBron.
You stand your ground, too, with a leader like that. You don't want to take a step back. You move to the front line with a guy like that, and you want to bring your game up to another level. And that's what I'm going to continue to do, because I know that if we continue to be with one another and keep utilizing one another, man, the sky is the limit.
There's a narrative out there that what happened was Kyrie heard LeBron wanted him traded. I've never believed that, and Kyrie dispelled it yesterday when he said he was feeling this way before the playoffs even started. We know how he says he felt during the Eastern Conference Finals and right after the finals. Like right now, if you were to tell me there's 2 Kyries, one with a beard and one without a beard, with 2 different personalities, that makes as much sense as anything I can think of.
Does he become the NBA's villain now? Or right now, in your mind, is Kevin Durant still holding that spot?
Oh, I think it's Durant. I think he becomes, but I think people are very interested in watching LeBron and the Cavs play him.
Yes, I just think people look at Kyrie just a little bit different.
And it doesn't make sense from so many perspectives, it doesn't make sense.
Kevin Durant made a splash on Twitter yesterday as it appears that he used fake accounts to get into arguments with strangers online. Nick, the story is confusing enough as it is. No one can explain it better than you, so...
Okay, so we saw late the night before last someone tweet to Kevin Durant criticizing his move to Golden State. Then Kevin Durant's Twitter account replied twice in third person, referring to Durant as he and him, defending Russ, but taking shots at his other former Thunder teammates and taking a shot at Billy Donovan. Those tweets were then erased. Then the great people of NBA Twitter discovered Kevin Durant almost assuredly has a secret Instagram account that his brother interacts with at times, and there's the tweets right there. He didn't like the organization playing for Billy Donovan. His roster wasn't that good. It was just him and Russ. That's a weird thing to say if you were actually Kevin Durant. The other tweet was, imagine taking Russ off that team, see how bad they were. KD can't win a championship with those cats. We then discovered he almost assuredly has a secret or a private Instagram that he argues with strangers about Kevin Durant on. We also know he just released some shoes that have on the insoles inscribed anonymous internet comments. So,
Nick, bottom line it. Can you just bottom line it?
Bottom line is Kevin Durant is creating egg avatar Twitter accounts to argue with anonymous 17-year-olds on Twitter, and I love it so much.
Why?
I'm so happy that this is...
What is he doing?
What's going on with these NBA players? Maybe it should be they didn't go to college long enough. I mean, their overall social skills. Now, Nick, I need help with social media.
Yeah?
Now, I got you helping me out. I got Angela, who runs all of our social here, helping me out. Like, this to me is just so childish. All right?
Yeah,
like,
of course it's
is it this generation, or is it something with the NBA players that are different than the other professional
Why are we going macro? Why are we going big picture, making it about a whole league or a whole generation? Let's make this about Kevin Durant. Let's just make this.
I mean, we just had a sensational interview with Kyrie Irving being disingenuous.
Listen, it is one thing to do a bad interview. It is another thing to fresh off your finals MVP, the best season of your life, theoretically, to decide I am going to go through the process of creating fake, secret Twitter accounts to argue with people on the internet. Now, listen, I'm not above arguing with some strangers online, but I will do it
as
Nick Wright.
Right.
KD seems to...
How much money you think KD got right now?
$322 million. You asked me a question, I answered it. Was that more precise than you had expected?
No, it just seems like a man is... Well, I also see another rich guy arguing with people on Twitter, too.
Okay,
but that's
listen. Kevin Durant, I think, mistakenly thought when he went to Golden State, okay, all we got to do is win, and I got to play great, and the criticism will go away.
No, everyone will like me. That's what it seems like to me. KD wants to be liked.
But he's literally going at it in the worst possible way. First, I thought maybe he wanted to change his image up, unpolish it a little bit, a little bit more of a little Dennis Rodman-esque, a little bad boy.
A little dirty.
Then I think he literally just doesn't know what he's doing. He's going the opposite way. So now he's hiding that account. I can't tell if they want me to like him or not like him. It literally has confused me.
I don't know that he knows the best way to go about it because, now listen, I understand some people are like, listen, this was obviously his social media manager who had the access to the account, who sent the tweets. That would be 99% of NBA stars. If this story came out, I would think, okay, someone was tweeting from their account.
Right.
But here is the corroborating evidence. Piece one, Kevin Durant is known on his actual account to argue with random strangers, to argue with people defending himself. Kevin Durant is known to release signature sneakers with internet comments on them. We have overwhelming evidence that Kevin Durant has a private Instagram account with which he's used to argue with internet strangers. So my only question is this, KD, let's argue. Like, please, KD, I'd love to do it on the show, but we can definitely do it on the internet. Like, I'm Nick Wright. Like, I'm not Kevin Durant.
But that's my question.
I'm allowed to do this.
If you had to, before we move on, if you had to come up with a fake Twitter, Instagram name or whatever it is, I have to know just what it would be.
Chris Carter 80.
Okay, just making sure. That's what I thought, and I just wasn't sure if...
Yeah, he's sending out some tweets.
That's what I'd go with.
Using his money, his son, and now his Twitter
he passes me the phone before I press send.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Tell us what you think and leave us a review. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.